Good evening and welcome to Concord TV's live budget presentation. My name is David Murdo, the board chair. The annual live budget presentation is a requirement of our contract with the City of Concord, Article 2B. Concord Community TV agrees to provide a budget by May 11th showing the next year's proposed revenues and expenditures, showing current year budget estimates, current year revenues and expenditures, and 2 years previous actual expenditures with appropriate explanatory details. Explanatory details shall include the derivation of major revenues and expenditures and explanations of significant year-to-year changes in numbers. Said budget is to be presented to the public at an open meeting and cablecast on Concord Community TV, a notice of which will be posted on the Concord Community TV website at least 10 days prior to the meeting. Thank you for watching. I now turn it over to Josh Hardy, our Executive Director.
All right. Thank you for the opening act, David. That was great. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. For people watching on YouTube, I know we have a few people tuning in. As David said, this is a contractual obligation, but it is also a nice opportunity as a nonprofit to take a look at the finances and make sure our board is kept up to date with the upcoming fiscal year 2021-22 budget. So the board should have in front of them the proposed revenues for the next fiscal year, which begins on July 1st of 2021 and ends June 30th, 2022. I'm going to go over some of the significant line items. Just a reminder for the public at home as well, that all of our 990 forms that we file each year are on our website, as well as annual reports, which have financial summaries as well at yourconcordtv.org. Getting into some of the significant line items of interest, looking at this revenue slide that Mike has pulled up. Board members may not be able to see it, but I think the folks at home can see it perfectly fine. Line item 4,000, franchise fee. Basically what the franchise fees are is we collect 33.5% from the City of Concord, which receives the cable franchise fees from Comcast. Collecting 5% of cable revenues as part of the franchise agreement. And so our cut of that this past year being $261,300, I have estimated $260,000 for franchise fees this year. The kicker is, and we've known this for as many years as we've been doing this, is we don't know the actual figure yet. So we're going off of what we received last year. That number could go up or down depending on the 5% cable revenues generated by Comcast. That's the nature of the business we're in. So the estimation is hold steady, best that we can. By the way, if anyone, board members, have questions, it's probably better to save them when I've gone through my major items, unless there's something that really I need to be corrected on. And if there's anything that really needs to be corrected, Mike would probably say something from the back as well. The next line item I want to just point out is line 4104, which is the Comcast grant, $52,500. That is specifically for production equipment. It's in a separate reserve account. And you would see at the back of the budget, it's actually subtracted from our operating revenue because we can't use it for operational expenses. Line item 4350, classes and camps. Because we are confirmed running our summer camps, it's in the Parks and Rec brochures, that usually brings in about $2,000. At this point, I'm not projecting that we're going to bring back the adult video classes yet, because to be honest, I don't know. So $2,000, I can pretty much guarantee that if we fill those camps up, that's what we would generate. Another line item, which Alwyn had asked a good question last week, the fundraising line item. We have listed in there a negative from this current year because of a storage unit that stores all of our Easter supplies and whatnot. I'm working with Jim to figure out what exactly we do with that storage unit, whether we keep it or repurpose it or share it with another nonprofit. There's a lot of options that I don't have an answer for you tonight. But just so you know that's why it looks a little funky there. There was also a decision I could have made on line 4030 contributions income. Some of that was from New Hampshire Gives, which I could have put in the fundraising line item. That was just a decision to put that into contributions. So for the estimated year, that's why you see that negative 6380, and I'm working on a solution, so I'm planning on just zeroing out that line, the 4411 fundraising. Next that I would want to look at here in the revenues is interest income. I had overshot my estimates pretty significantly. The interest rates changed on our savings account that we have. So I've gone with a more conservative estimate of interest income, but sometimes you just own up to some bad math in a previous year. Fortunately, it's a pretty small change. And if interest rates go up on savings account, even better. So next, that'll take us to the first slide for expenses, where I have a couple that I want to point out. First off, our music license, which is typically $500, is being bumped up to $600 a year. That's through APM Music. So that is 5032 music license. They actually forgot to bill us for a little while, so this fiscal year we haven't paid yet because they forgot to invoice us. So that will show up in the final end of year. But just so, that's why you see the change from 500 to 600. Something that I'm sure you all remember is the Telview streaming, line item 5092, that we had that jump to almost 11,000 because of that 5-year renewing service contract that we had forgotten about. We're lucky it's another 5 years before we have to pay that again. So this year we should hit the $6,000 for that, for Telview. Let's see. Health insurance line item 5,200. I'm estimating that to be a lot lower. You'll see in the current year we're at about 17,000, and I'm estimating 16,000. That's because one of our staff came off of the health insurance, both the Anthem plan and the Delta Dental plan. So we currently only have 3 staff on instead of 4. So that number should stay lower. And then payroll expenses, that's the other big one. I have us at 224,000 projected for the next fiscal year. That does include our current staff that we have now, our marketing and administrative assistant. His hours have been cutting back just due to he's phasing towards retirement, so his hours have been cutting back. At some point, I am going to be looking to bring on another maybe 25, 30 hour per week, either staff producer or training coordinator. So I think that would bump us up to 224,000. As of this current fiscal year, we're right on track for hitting our 200,000 in payroll expenses. But if I was going to bring someone else on and the marketing and administrative assistant cut back, that's what kind of makes up that difference. So those are in terms of all the different line items, and I feel bad for Mike because I didn't point out. Hopefully you kept up there, Mike, with slide number 2. He's good like that. I catch him off guard. But just some of my overall thoughts, looking at the bottom line, is we've run at a pretty significant surplus, both in fiscal year 18-19 and 19-20. That's due really in large part to our payroll actually had dropped significantly. If you look in that far left column, at one point our payroll expenses were up to 259,000, which was due to some revenue sources that were one-time only, that weren't permanent. And also franchise fees at one point were at 284,000, and I believe 290,000 the year before that. So payroll wasn't sustainable at 260,000, but we still ran at a pretty good surplus. If I had to guess what our cash reserves are, let's say all revenues stopped, how long could we keep operating? We have 6 to 7 months worth of saved up, which for nonprofits, I believe is an acceptable range. Not that that's something that would happen, but we do have cash on hand, but at the same time, we're not hoarding. That we don't intentionally have a surplus significantly. And that's why I pretty much tried to zero out the budget. That's the goal for this upcoming year, is to spend what we collect, knowing that we have some cash reserves available. So the final line would be Looks like we lost a couple lights there. They must be using the auditorium upstairs, Mike. At this point, we'll go with it. Or was that you trying to end the show, Mike? But yeah, so truly the bottom line is my goal is for a completely balanced budget next year. So it says a surplus of $775, which is basically zeroed out, best we can have it. At this point, I would love questions from the board about either anything I said. There's some line items that I really didn't mention. There's things like business insurance, workers' comp. There's other expense items that I just didn't mention that if you want more details, I can try to provide. Mr. Russell.
In the revenue source, line 4510 says used equipment sales. In the past, there's been some revenue, and this coming year, it appears there's none listed. I guess my question is there, and I know the turnover equipment is outmoded and certainly not worn out. Is there a location on the ConcordTV website or elsewhere where used equipment is listed and somebody could look and, myself or someone else could look and say, hey, I'll take something that's 2, 3, 4 years old because I'm low tech Charlie. I'm not on the cutting edge.
Right, yeah, that's a great point. So a couple thoughts I have on that are I wanted to treat that, certainly we will have some equipment that's outdated that we could sell. I figure we could treat that as, if we get that revenue, that's great, but I don't want to count on it because we've been disappointed before or had that number kind of fluctuate throughout the years. The other thing is I kind of want to try, and this is just my personal philosophy, to try with a lot of our used equipment to see if the schools want it, to see if the city could use it, to see if the library could use it. You'll remember the Uniset, which was this big green screen that we gave to Runlet Middle School that I believe they still use. So we wouldn't generate any money, but we do help with education, and it won't help us on our bottom line, but like if we get rid of or move on from any of our iMacs, I would check with the school district first. So that's just a couple thoughts I have on that. But definitely, if we sell equipment, either a listing on the website or we've gone through Craigslist before too for those postings.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, thanks, Josh, for a great presentation. So with that, do we have a motion to accept the budget as presented?
I'll make a motion. Well, I do have a question. If any changes or additions to some line items need to be made, do they need to be made right now as in a salary adjustment?
No, because this budget is not a true one yet.
Oh.
We don't know what is going to be the final budget from the city.
Just to let you know, in my sort of payroll estimates, I did factor in with that 224,000. I did factor in just in general across the board that there could be bump ups, whether they're just CPI bump ups or whatever. So that is built in. The 224 is kind of an aggressively high number. So not that it's specifically built in, but we could handle that.
Awesome. Thank you. So then, given that, I will make a motion to accept.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All approve?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, we have a new budget.
Okay.
With that concludes our presentation this evening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, board, for coming in for the quick presentation. And have a great night.
Good evening.